Hello, everyone, and thanks for listening to the Quality Hub Chatting with ISO Experts. I'm your host, Xavier Francis, and today I'm here with Suzanne Weber-Smatko, Manager of Consulting Services here at CORE. Glad you could join us again.
Thanks, X. Good morning.
So, you're probably wondering what today's podcast is based on the sound you heard at the beginning. Well, today's podcast is called Restarting a Stalled QMS, and we're going to talk about what may cause and how to help a QMS that's been stagnant. But before we dig into that, let's first learn a little bit about our guest, Suzanne. She's been here a lot. And I'm curious, Suzanne, what is your favorite beverage?
Adult beverages, X.
Any adult beverage?
Any adult
all
beverage.
The above. Okay.
All of the above.
Speaking of flatlining, right?
Right? We'll talk a little bit about my experience relative to the topic that we have today.
Absolutely.
So we're talking about a stalled or a stagnant QMS. I have been there years ago where businesses really, they're certified.
Mm-hmm.
They've got the piece of paper, but the quality management system really isn't bringing any type of value.
Yeah, it's just there. That's all they have is the piece of paper.
And it may have had some horsepower at one point in time during the implementation process, but as we lose people or have turnover or changes in management, or we have a tendency to kind of put that on the back burner because, you have most of the time you don't have a dedicated quality management person that is, or someone or one person that's dedicated to your quality management system. And therefore you have multiple roles to fill or multiple hats to wear. And ISO, where your quality management system activities have a tendency to take a back seat to everything else.
They fall on the back burner.
Yeah.
They're simmering.
Yeah, they simmer, right? And then this is going to sound familiar to a lot of people, but you hurry up and you prepare right before a certification audit. And that is really when you know that your quality management system is sort of stagnant or not giving you the value that it should bring you.
Yep. Well, you kind of mentioned it a little bit, but what are the symptoms of a stagnant or stalled QMS?
Well, I think it's basically, you're really not doing anything to improve the business. Your quality management system should bring that type of value to your business where you're continually identifying, using data, and we can talk a little bit more about that, but it's not bringing you any type of continuous improvement initiatives or identifying improvement initiatives.
So maybe when you're looking at your metrics, you're just looking at the same thing. It's 4.5 out of 5.
Yeah,
we're good.
If you're constantly,
and then you don't look at what else you could measure.
Yeah. And I think I've mentioned this a couple of times in a few other podcasts, but if you're not measuring, I come from the world of if you're not measuring it, you're not necessarily managing it properly.
Right.
So that's a good point. I mean, if you have quality objectives that you are continuously meeting without any problems, it might be time for you to rethink what you're going to measure so that you can measure a different area.
Yep.
Because the reason why you measure is so that you can identify, again, areas of improvement. Right. That data is going to tell you where you need to focus.
Yep.
Also, I mean, if you're not conducting your management reviews or no valuable discussion is taking place, that you're just
going through the
documenting
motions.
And documenting discussion notes or just to kind of hit the box that we've had a management review, those discussions should really bring value add to the business. And if they're not, then, perhaps maybe you need to think, there's a certain set of agenda items that are required in the standard that you need to talk about during a management review. If I see often where there might be quarterly business reviews that management or leadership is doing, find a way to incorporate the requirements of the standard into a meeting that you're already having rather than having just a standalone quality management meeting.
Right.
But if you're not having any of those discussions with leadership teams and talking about strategic alignment and improvements and promoting that, the risk-based thinking and continuous improvement initiatives, then the quality management review is definitely a good place to have one.
Right.
I mean, conduct one.
And maybe it's time to bring some new people in.
Yeah.
Again, maybe it's time to
put a new set of eyes on
a new set of eyes. If let's say you're going to start, looking at metrics for something else, bring in the people that are involved in that, get involved with people that are on the floor,
Yes.
engagement.
Yes. Yeah. So that brings up another good point. So internal audit programs, if you're doing internal audit programs and they're not identifying nonconformances or opportunities for improvement, or your internal audits are just not being conducted, and again, you're doing the paperwork exercise right before an audit, it's certainly not bringing you the value. I mean, the purpose of an internal audit is one, yes, to make sure that you're compliant to the standard or the requirements set forth in the standard in order for you to be certified, that you're sustaining those processes, but identifying areas of improvement. And that includes engaging people, right? When you're doing an internal audit, you're engaging people. You're not sitting at your desk filling out an internal audit record.
Right.
You're walking around and you're interviewing people with the process. And during that, your employees should feel comfortable enough to be able to express improvements in that process that you're auditing.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be a hard thing, or it's not like a cop's running around, trying to look at your problems and go, oh, here's a problem. Oh, gotcha. What are you guys doing? Just
the value is the continuous.
Exactly.
I like to call it never-ending improvement. We call it continuous improvement, but it truly is never-ending.
Yeah.
So that's the value that your certification should bring you.
Okay.
Right? Is continually improving the business, because it's really all about the bottom line. So if you start identifying little things during these activities that, internal audits and management reviews and all of those things that should be highlighting or bringing to the surface areas that you need to, that will better the business.
Absolutely.
I think the other thing is also you are supposed to document nonconformances and corrective actions. You're supposed to have a process to document those things. There's a reason for that. It's not because you need to document them so that it becomes an administrative burden.
Right.
You're supposed to document those things in order to look at trends. Again, identify areas of improvement. But if you're not documenting your nonconformances and your corrective actions, if it's not part of your daily, weekly, monthly, if you haven't educated everyone on the importance of documenting a nonconformance and using that data to make some data-driven decisions, then your QMS is pretty much stagnant, right? That's another thing that you don't want to go through a paper exercise and show that you're implementing a nonconformance or a corrective action 1 month before your audit.
Okay, we need this. Let's do it.
Yes, exactly. Yep.
So I guess a good question would be then, is your current quality management system giving you any value?
Well, if you're not using the data for trends and analysis to drive improvement, it's not giving you the value.
So let's take another look at this. I would say what we've talked about up to this point has been being a little lackadaisical in your QMS. You're going through the motions, doing what you got to do to keep you certified, maybe not. But what if you're doing something else where you're making it more complicated than it should be? Is that a possibility?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, you can certainly overcomplicate your quality management system. I've seen through my experience where you overcomplicate it with tons of documentation that really isn't bringing any kind of value to the business. So again, it's not that documentation is a bad thing, but really, really identify the things that you need to document, not just to have a bunch of procedures, because that's just not, it's just, you just don't need that anymore. It's really all about demonstrating the processes. So I think being able to define and having evidence of things like key processes, objectives, KPIs, roles and responsibilities. I won't get into the detail of that stuff. I know that we're going to talk about that later on. But understanding the requirements, if I had one, bit of advice or recommendation, is understanding what the requirement is.
Okay.
The interpretation of a standard can get overcomplicated if you're an overthinker. Right. So I think that understanding the requirements will allow you to streamline your QMS without making it overcomplicated. I don't know if that makes sense to you.
Absolutely,
it makes sense to me.
I would say two things with that is, one, like you said, we are going to talk about this actually in the following 2-week podcast. We're going to cover some of those ways that you can simplify it.
Yeah.
Not make it too complicated.
We actually have a lot of, we do get customers that reach out to simplify their quality management systems because they're overcomplicated. They have a ton of documentation, or they've just they've just overcomplicated all the processes, and realistically, it doesn't have to be complicated.
And it makes it drudgery. It's like, oh my gosh, we're going through all this stuff.
Yeah.
Is it really? Yeah, it's just superfluous information.
And if you have the right engagement and the right education and the right support from your leadership team, it should not be that cumbersome to maintain your quality management system.
Well, my second point there was, that's one of the reasons we're here, is we can help you read it and we can define it for you.
Yeah.
Because all of standard is, I mean, it's like you can read some of this stuff, and we've read some of these clauses, and we're going to continue, and you're like, what the heck does that mean?
Yeah.
And you can go way off in the left field and just document the crap out of something and just, completely, and you're like, oh, that's not what it meant. That's one of the reasons we're here, to help you with that.
Yeah, the fluff. I call it the fluff, or the fluffiness,
The
right?
fluff. Yep. And this isn't a puppy dog, so it's not a good thing.
No. It's just, that's sort of my line of thinking is, tell me what I need to know and tell me what I need to do.
Yep.
Right. I don't want all the fluff.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And I guess that's a good way of saying you can give your quality management system a lot of fluff that you don't necessarily need to have, I guess.
Right.
Right.
All right. So let's say you really got stagnant. You left it on the back burner too long. The water ran out. Didn't catch fire, but it smoked a lot. And now you lost your certification. What can you do? I know that's a worst case scenario, but let's say you've let it lapse to the point and haven't focused on it, and it's been so stalled. You guys, do we really need the certification?
Yeah. Well, we certainly help a lot of businesses in that area. Because they lose their certifications for many reasons. They didn't have a sustainable quality management system in the first place. It was overcomplicated. Or they've lost resources. Maybe they've lost a quality manager or someone who had the knowledge. So there's many different reasons why people let their cert lapse.
Okay.
But I would say mainly because they've overcomplicated it and made it to the point where, people couldn't keep up with it, or they didn't have the right support. Yeah. Right.
Well, if you have somebody that's, I know there's people here at this business that just absolutely quality management is just, they eat and breathe it, and if you had somebody move on and they really owned it well, and then you have somebody else and that was just part of their role and they come on and they're really good at something else, but they're not quite as good at the QMS, or it's not as interesting, or they're not as passionate about it. That's part of what we talked about in another one, where you have to make sure that you are bringing people that meet the qualifications and they're competent in doing their job. Maybe they need some training.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would agree with that 100%. Competencies is key. You can't just throw somebody into a quality role and expect them to build a quality management system without them going through the right training. Right. Or, again, understanding what the requirements are, or it could become cumbersome. Yep. So we do help a lot of clients that have lost their certification, or their certification has lapsed for various reasons.
What steps does that take to get your certification back? Are you back at square one, or? You are. You will have to go through a certification, not just your surveillance, because typically, you go through your initial certification and then your recertification. If you let your certification lapse, you have to go through a full certification audit with the register. And that's different. Is that basically the same as what it is every 3 years, or is it actually almost like you're starting completely fresh? You're starting completely fresh. Okay. And it may cost you more money. Yeah. Well, that's one reason to get it unstalled, so you don't lose your certification, so you're not spending more money to get recertified. For me, it would be the cost to having to go through a full certification audit because you let your cert lapse is certainly not worth it. Well, and you're going to have to reach out and find another registrar or the same one. It might not be the same auditor. Yeah, don't let your cert lapse. Yeah. I know we get on here to educate people on this stuff, but there's help. Yeah. There's help out there. Don't let it lapse. If you lose resources, and a lot of businesses struggle with that these days. They either can't find competent people to bring in, or they're cutting heads, or, they have resource constraints. Yep. There's help out there. So my recommendation was don't let your certification lapse in the first place. All right. Well, this has been great. So basically the symptoms are you're not getting anything out of it. Your QMS is just, it's stagnant. You're not doing anything. You're not seeing any value from it. You're going through a paper exercise. You're going through paper exercises. You may have overcomplicated it. You might have lost resources. That's why they could be stalled. Fixing those things. One way you could fix it is find somebody, getting some training, get them back involved, reach out to us. We can help you with simplifying it, we actually do have a level where we can actually be your MREP.
Yeah.
So let's say you have lost I know this is going to sound like a commercial, but if you have lost that person and you're just like, man, I don't know how to go through finding somebody, or we can't afford that.
We help
you can
people.
afford, someone like us where we can help you and come in and take care of that. And really
we help businesses all the time with that, right? We have different levels of services that we provide, not only from getting people educated, but also helping them through consulting support throughout a year, whether it be, QMS administration to make sure that you're documenting nonconformances and corrective actions, that you're conducting your management reviews, your internal audits are done.
Yeah. We
Reach
offer
out
internal
whatever
audit.
you need if you have, customer escapes or anything like that. And
we
then
can certainly be the resource you need
Absolutely.
at any point of this if you have a stalled QMS.
Yeah, it's what we do.
Absolutely.
It's what we do best.
Really, it really is. Well, do you have any last thoughts? This has been insightful, and I know we're going to get into some of the more details on how to deal with the complicated and overburdensome, if you will, QMS the next 2 weeks. But any last thoughts?
No, I think we pretty much covered it. I mean, if you're a leadership team and you are listening to the podcasts, it certainly needs to be driven from the leadership down throughout the organization. But it's very, very important, and you have a commitment to support the quality management system. Don't make it a paper exercise.
Yeah.
It will certainly protect your bottom line.
Absolutely. You've seen that over
if it's done
and over
right.
time and time again.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, it's been great talking to you. And I really do want to thank you for being here again. And we're going to see you the next 2 weeks, but it's going to be Suze squared, because it's going to be Suze and Suze.
Yes.
Or Suzanne and Suzanne.
Nice.
Or, as we call them here, Boss Ann and Newzanne. Even though you're not new anymore.
I look forward to it.
Well, thanks everyone for listening to our podcast today, and we hope it's been informative for you. And just a reminder that we will be going over ideas on how to simplify your QMS in the next 2 weeks. Now, if you're looking for more information about Core Business Solutions and how we can help you with ISO certification, keeping you from getting into a stalled situation, or cybersecurity, customized training, or anything like that, please email us at info@thecoresolution.com. You can also visit our website at www.thecoresolution.com. And if you haven't followed us already on your favorite podcast platform or YouTube, be sure to do so, and that way you won't miss the next Quality Hub podcast when it's released next week. Have a great day, everyone.